guys, it's about 4 a.m. Saturday morning. Been up since 2. Yay. I seem to be sleeping in 5-hour blocks. It's weird. Coffee time, of course. Good stuff. Okay, let's talk about the number 22 today and why it's significant. And we're going to touch on the Yod. We're talking about the Hebrew alphabet. The book of Revelations, again, has 22 chapters. There are 22 numbers, or letters, I should say, in the ancient Hebrew, no vowels. Okay, here is a photo of those, letters. There's a couple extra there, if you see it. But anyway, the Aleph and the Bet, where we get the word alphabet, and through the 22nd letter, we see right here the Tav, which is a cross. Aleph represents God, Godhead, and the Tav represents the cross, or Jesus. Strange, right? In the book of Revelations, we find the phrase, I am the Alpha and Omega. Okay? And that is translated into, I am the first and the last. Okay, why? Where does that come from? That comes from the Greek alphabet. Strange, right? Translation. Because the Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet, and the Omega is the last. That's where we get that translation from. But if we translate it into Hebrew, it would be, I am the Aleph and the Tav. Okay, now that common translation is, I am the first and the last. What if it is basically telling us here, in my interpretation, what if I am the spoken word? What if Jesus is the spoken word? In other words, the breath, just like God, the Aleph, spoke us into existence. And we come to Jesus' Son at the end, the Tav, which, by the way, means mark, covenant, and truth. Strange, right? Just here to make you think. Now, we have what's known as the Yod, also a very significant letter in the alphabet. Okay, you can see the Yod is the arm, right, or hand of God. And that has since, in modern day Hebrew, it's now just a little comma. It's just a little comma. Strange, right? The smallest letter. Hand, work, deed. In the ancient Hebrew, the Paleo, each letter told a story. So where am I going with this? Okay, just another one for 22. Psalms 119, okay, is basically, there's 176 verses in Psalms 119, and it's divided into 22 stanzas. And each stanza is dedicated to a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Strange, right? Strange. 22. What if there's something very simple attached to the 22, but yet very prophetic? The Alpha and Omega, I am the first and the last. We also know that we have to take it for what it is, okay? And I'm one that challenges my beliefs all the time. And I didn't know how to quite put this all together. And I'm still kind of putting it together, if you will. But if you remember back in April of 2024, this was going around the internet, this mark that, the eclipse, and many people went to the towns near there. Okay, and that actually represents the Aleph. Strange, right? And yet, what if the end times, truly the end times, we end up with the Tav, Jesus? So let's go 22 months from that Aleph mark. 22 months, we're just adding numbers together, right? 22 months in February of 2026, that would be 22 months. There's a minor feast, in other words, the new year for trees. It's called Tu B'Shavat. Sorry if I'm slaughtering that. And that is the new year for trees, right? Jesus died on a cross, on a tree. There's many verses in the Bible that make reference to that tree. In other words, Jesus bared our curses, our burdens on that cross or that tree. Interestingly enough, in the Old Testament, and it's kind of also mentioned in Deuteronomy, there is the king of Ai, okay, which is the king, and it is spelled A-I. Just kind of let that sink in for a minute. Joshua conquered the city, and he had his king, the king of Ai, or A-I, on a cross. They killed him on a cross. They hung him on a tree. Interesting. Again, just here to make you think. So what is the new Feast of Trees? Well, for my rapture friends, maybe there's something there for you. Jesus is the vine. We can all agree on that, but isn't he also New Year for trees? Isn't he also, we see it as a vine, but isn't he truly a tree? I mean, that we all hold on to. Again, it's just food for thought. And on that day, surprisingly enough, there's going to be six planets in the sky in an alignment. February 2nd, 2026. Watch the stars, watch the skies. But there is going to be 6 planets in the heavens. Now down here, this is Earth and the moon. But on the New Year of Trees, isn't that pretty much a cross from an overhead view? Isn't that pretty much a cross or a sign in the heavens? We wouldn't necessarily see that cross from our point of view, but from God's point of view, this is what it would look like. Interesting, right? Again, I'm just throwing stuff out here to make you think. I am the Alpha and Omega. I am the Aleph and the Tav. Doesn't that make more sense? I am the very word you speak, the breath. Tav, remember, is the truth, the spoken word. It's also the mark. It's the sign, and it's the covenant. Jesus is known as the New Covenant or the New Testament. Okay, but Jesus is God's testament. That's his son. That's where we get that name from. Most people just take this information and, okay, it's all good. It's all good. But that number 22 has a lot of things I don't think we really understand. In the beginning, God spoke us into existence with his very breath. And I am the Aleph and the Toph. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the spoken word, Jesus is saying in Revelation. Most people say, oh, it's the first and last. If you understand the language, it would be him stating, I am the Word. I am the Word. So keep your eye out for that. And there's some play on the days, if you will. The Yod, which symbolizes the handiwork or the hand of God, okay, was literally an arm. Here, I'll show you here. It was literally, there's the Yod. It's an arm. And now modern Hebrew, it's like a little comma that kind of floats in the air, a little dot with a tail. Kind of symbolic of a lot of people's faith today. Anyway, just some food for thought.